OTB AM.
At 8:40 this morning, we're going to take you through the sports pages. Other clubs don't like Leeds United, but they do want them around. Everybody hates us, we don't care, was the theme of the piece last night, talking about Marcelo Bielsa. By all accounts, the Bielsa biography that's doing the rounds at the moment is a sensational piece of work, so recommend you get your hands on that. It's not the first time I felt that vulnerability. Alex Corbisiero it is the first time I felt that vulnerability. Alex Corbisiero talking about his cancer diagnosis and also the mental health issues that he would have suffered from big-time professional sport as well. So that's what's in the sports on OTBsports.com for you this morning. I'm just going to run you through the headlines from the rest of the papers. The Examiner this morning is sport behind closed doors as lift in crowd limits postponed. And then obviously they're leading with the story. Coonahan leads tributes as Cork mourns All-Ireland winner O'Connor. Conor Coonahan has led the tributes to his friend and fellow clubman Kieran O'Connor, who sadly died yesterday after a long illness. He was just 41 years of age and obviously has a young family behind him, leaves behind as well. So tragedy for Cork GAA. The Herald this morning, gunned down. That's the headline on the story from Arsenal's victory against Liverpool last night. Reds record bid gunned down. And that was Nelson and Lacazette punishing errors to end Liverpool's hopes of reaching 100 points. Scanlon gets nod for LOI role as FAI board stand by Walsh. So Ray Walsh will continue to be the operations director of the FAI. And Meath native Mark Scanlon has been appointed the new League of Ireland director with, as I said, Ray Walsh sticking around. Grounds for concern as match limits to stay at 200 for all sports is how they have reported on that. So it's going to have an impact for the League of Ireland and also for the GA, as we've just been talking about there. And then I'll give you the headlines from the tabloids. Cops, red faces is that story there. Keystone Klops is how they're doing it. The Sun are not leading with that story. They're leading with what they have as an inclusive, and it's a Pogba 5-year deal. Paul set to sign after U-turn over United Future. I guess this protects the assets so that they can sell them whenever the market returns to normal. That might be the thinking behind that. No Niall role. So Niall Quinn, it's been reported, is no longer part of the FAI's senior management. The interim deputy CEO is not among the 4 new appointments to the association's leadership group. I wonder, is he still the deputy CEO? And that bit hasn't quite been clarified, but we're also given to understand that he didn't actually apply for any of the roles that were advertised internally in the FAI that have been filled already. So there is obviously the CEO's role, which is currently being advertised, and they are taking external candidates for that. The Irish Daily Mail this morning, City ceasefire. Again, another exclusive. Peace talks have been held between UEFA's president and Manchester City's chairman in the wake of the bitter battle between the pair. So I guess if you're City, you want to draw a discreet veil over everything that's happened and say, oh no, everything's fine now. We're not going to be making any further investments in football. The English newspapers this morning, The Guardian, obviously leading with the goals from last night. And also the cricket story about Broad and Anderson not playing together. Anderson and Wood left on sidelines is the Telegraph. They also have that same picture of the second goal being scored last night. And I didn't do the Irish Times, but I'll do that next. Yeah, the Jesus puns, right? Jesus shows Bournemouth the way down. He's leading them to the opposite of the promised land. Arsenal pounce on Liverpool errors to deny them a century, and Brentford stay hot on West Brom's heels. West Brom must be very, very annoyed about the fact that Brentford won't just disappear. But the Brentford story is absolutely ludicrous. From where they've come to where they are now, and the precipice of playing Premier League football next season is an unbelievable story, really. And then the Lions tour, holding its dates in 2021, will delay the global calendar. So the global calendar that we've been very, enthusiastic and optimistic about in World Rugby, not going to happen next season. So maybe that just buys them all a little bit of time to get to the point where they can move forward. And that is really it. Sorry, one last one for you. The Racing Post this morning, Foley hot on Pepper's chance in Irish Oaks is the front page story, and fast and furious. They expect a backlash for Crystal Palace tonight, who essentially have been on the beach since the start of the return of football since lockdown came back. So that's that. I'm going to tell you what's on the OTB Sports app this morning. Just search for OTB Sports and download it there. That's your home feed, which tells you what's coming up today, the main stories that we're covering, and you can scroll down, and that's every story that you've ever wanted is there, depending on which of the sports you actually select. You can click on the little human being in the top right-hand corner, and then you click on the radio section for live radio, non-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then all of our podcasts are also up there as well. Right. Owen, what have you got for us?
Well, there's a couple of stories to touch on this morning. Like, it's been a big 24 hours from the FAI to getting a new Minister of State for Sport. Should we just start very briefly on the idea that we're not going to have 500 people in grounds the weekend after next? Like, just on a purely sporting conversation. Like, we've obviously got into the science and the very understandable reasons with Dr. Horgan there a moment ago. But, like, there's a lot of leagues who've been planning their financial re-injection around the fact that they're going to have 500 people at stadiums. So obviously that includes players and management and all that. So whatever, 410, 420 paying customers. This is the FAI, this is the GEA. So, like, yesterday would have sparked a bit of worry, I would have thought, like, especially if you're a county board in the GEA who's front-loaded your calendar for one reason or another, and now all of a sudden you actually are going to lose half your money because you front-loaded your calendar. Like, Wexford springs to mind. You've got a championship that wraps up very, very early, in the hurling anyway. You're not going to have the financial windfall that you thought you were going to have now as a result of yesterday's news.
Yeah, and look, you know, at tenner a pop, it's £3,000. At 20 quid a pop, it's £6,000. So it's not a huge amount of money. Maybe multiplied by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of club games, suddenly it would be a bit of money coming into to the individual localised coffers, and it's very rare that that'll happen. At the same time, if you put yourself into the shoes of the COVID officer for a GA club, you're pretty happy about this, I would suspect. That, like, one part of you is like, it would have been great to have 500 people there, but actually my job now becomes just about manageable. Just about. It'll be the two teams, it'll be maybe 100 spectators, and maybe we don't even open it up to 100 spectators because it's so small. And actually, you know, I'm just going to be like taking another few weeks here to get all of our ducks in a row.
It's a good point. Like, the COVID officers that have been appointed for a club and will be overseeing these fixtures, they're the ones that you would have had, they're the ones you would have felt sorry for over the last little while, because they've been put into this position where they've had to get to grips with this virus and know exactly the, whatever, 50 odd bullet points that you have to adhere to on match day. Their job has been lessened a little bit. Like, with whatever, 150 fans to look at, you could almost do a glancing eye over the entire crowd and see how well social distancing is being observed. That is far more complicated the closer you get to 500 people. So definitely that is good from their perspective. And, like, I mean, this is national health advice. That is the important thing. This is a very insignificant concern if the alternate reality was 500 people are at a GEA game and a cluster happened. That would have been an absolute disaster. So this is good news. Don't get me wrong that, like, national health is being followed and that we're being cautious about this. It's just the lesser story here is that there will be a bit of money that won't be brought in.
Yeah,
but,
look, and they're not the only exactly.
Yeah.
The whole country is facing that. You just have to walk around the streets and see the amount of commercial property signs that are up at the moment. And again, I mean, there's some talk about the COVID payments being extended into next year. I think that, like, we're in that scenario where this is a brand new economic reality that nobody has had to deal with in living memory. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the government actually comes up to do to save jobs and keep society from falling apart, because you know, we can't really, families cannot bear another recession, and if it goes worse than that, we just won't be able to deal with it. So if the difference between us tipping into a second lockdown is slowing things down and getting it back under control, you know, maybe we accelerated things too fast. Maybe the whole point of having 500 next week was ludicrous in the first place. And just one last point here. It is your generation who are shouldering the blame for most of this and these outbreaks. And you're seeing that 75% of new cases a couple of days ago were in that younger demographic. The contact tracing for the house parties has been a little bit more difficult than it has been for other sectors of society. So how do you feel shouldering the blame for, you know, what's happening right now, Owen?
God, well, fingers being pointed is never a good way to go, is what I say. Like, I mean, there was fingers being pointed at Kerry for a while, weren't they, there as well, until they realised that the 30-strong house party were actually all city slickers coming down.
They'd travelled down. They'd brought their disease with them. I'm surprised there weren't pitchforks with burning turf. And I am still surprised that there isn't on the Limerick border and whatever the Dublin road coming in is.
Like I think that's it's funny you say that because like rumor has it that actually wasn't too far away from the reality before lockdown restrictions started being lifted. That there was, I think it was actually Gardaí on the Cork Road telling people to go back the way. But like on my Venn diagram,
People dressed as Gardaí anyway, Owen. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. I was one of those people. So of the Venn diagram, at least you only touched on one of my demographics, which is young people. I'm happy to shoulder that blame and say we will be back, we will bounce back and prove you wrong.
The FAI appointment yesterday has been, it's fair to say, has been met with a fairly underwhelmed response from various stakeholders.
Yeah, that's to say the least. I think the end of Dan McDonald's analysis piece in the Irish Independent today is good luck to him. He will need it, which is Mark Scanlon, who's the new FAI director. News was announced last night. Rhea Walsh is basically cementing her place at the top tier of the FAI with the role of COO. Like Mark Scanlon, you could probably say, is an underwhelming appointment. Rhea Walsh probably still has a bit of a connection to the John Delaney era. That's what you could say. In a negative sense about this, there had been talk last night that Niall Quinn didn't get the gig, but he didn't apply for the gig, is what Dan McDonald is reporting in his analysis piece today. So perhaps there is more to be written on the Niall Quinn story over the next little while. Or maybe it's a situation where Niall Quinn has got in, had a look around, doesn't like the look of what he's seeing, doesn't like the criticism that he's been getting over the last little while, and says, I'm not interested. That is just me speculating as to what might happen. Or he could be waiting for a bigger gig, and that could be coming up over the next little while as well. Like, this is going to be very, very interesting few weeks for someone like Mark Scanlon, because, as I say, we have had a bit of infighting, a lot of infighting in the organisation over the last little while. There is we're on the precipice of civil war here. Talk of a breakaway league. The League of Ireland, I mean, it just is the epitome of the wider issues in Irish football, and fixing that has to be the number one priority for Scanlon.
Yeah, I think we probably need to do a State of the Union equivalent on football in Ireland, where we talk about the future for the league. A breakaway league might be the right thing for the league to do, and to be independent of the FAI. And I mean, we did have that scenario for a long period of time, and you wouldn't say that the league had been successfully run at that stage, because there was a lot of infighting. And look, we're going back 2.5 decades at this point. So the league hasn't always been under the control of the FAI, and maybe it's time for them to go back to controlling their own affairs and see what that is actually like. Sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for, but maybe a properly run FAI and a properly run league can coexist under the same umbrella organisation. We're going to have to wait and see for that one.